Hey there, Wastelanders. Ryan with War Games News Radio here, back again with another interview segment for you all. This time I had a chance to speak with John Webb and James Sheehan of Modiphius about the highly anticipated Fallout New Vegas expansion for Wasteland Warfare. If you're a fan of the New Vegas video game, then this is going to be the expansion for you. We've got a look at the two new factions joining the game, the New California Republic and Caesar's Legion, as well as some look at some of the new companions which will be joining the game, expansions to the super mutants in the form of Nightkin, new robots, and a whole lot more. On top of all the New Vegas content, we're going to be also talking with James and John about the Commonwealth Expansion, and that's what's going to be coming up after New Vegas. So we got a chance to look at some pretty cool additions to the game, which not a lot of folks have heard much about yet. In particular, we're going to be talking about some of the new robot models that are going to be coming to the game. So if you're a fan of Mr. Handy variants, you're going to want to stick around. Protectrons as well, and the gunners, the railroad, it goes on and on and on. On top of that, we got the inside track on a new game mode, or I guess an expansion of a current game mode called Homestead. So if you're a fan of settlement mode, then this is going to be the thing that you're going to want. I know I'm really excited about this as a terrain builder and as a settlement mode fanatic. So lots going on in this video. You're gonna want to stick around. You're gonna want to watch right through to the end because the bombs just keep dropping. Fallout pun definitely intended on that one. So without much further ado, let's jump into the interview with John and James and hear all about the New Vegas expansion, the Commonwealth expansion, and a whole lot more. Let's get to it. We're coming up to, I guess what I would call one of the larger or first, real big expansions of the game with the release of this New Vegas content. And it seems like ever since the game launched, there's been one request online, and it's been New Vegas content. And, when the promo Ranger was released, I believe it was like late last year, everything just sort of exploded, and it was, all the fans finally got their wish. It's coming, it's coming. So, I mean, that was a pretty iconic little unit itself, but maybe you can give us a little bit of some info on some of the other units that might be coming to the game that, fans of the video game itself would be pretty excited to see hit the tabletop.
The New Vegas content was, like you say, something we've sort of been sitting on for a while and watching people saying, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And we knew we were going to do it. We just couldn't tell people. Right. So it's great that people now realize that they can get to that. So there were two real key factions in New Vegas that really stood out that need to be portrayed in the game, which are the NCR, New California Republic, and Caesar's Legion. So they were the kind of two main ones. Now, we've already got quite a few military-style factions in the game, and it's really important that the different factions feel different. I feel they operate slightly differently. So I kind of looked at the NCR and kind of felt that they don't have many men. They struggle with supplies, they struggle with manpower. So I wanted them to be kind of not too few, but certainly they're not specialists. They don't have the luxury of having specialists. They are kind of jack of all trades. Apart from the new guy, like the green basic recruit, he's not particularly good at anything. But the other guys, they've all got expertise skills. They're good at combat. They are all rounders, but they prefer shooting, because if you've got few people, you don't really want to get into hand-to-hand combat. You'd rather hang back. So that's really their kind of key principle. They also, their weaponry is, they don't really have that much. What they do have hits really hard. And we'll talk about weapons later on, but certainly in New Vegas, there's a whole different array of weapons compared to what's in, say, Fallout 3 and 4, which surprised me. I thought it'd be quite a bit of crossover and some others, but actually it's almost entirely different. So the NCR, they hit hard. There aren't that many of them. So Caesar's Legion, so they're kind of almost the opposite of NCR, where they have loads of manpower, and that allows them the freedom to have lots of specialists. But having specialists means they're good at one thing and not particularly great at others. When they have their general troops, they tend to have less armor. When you've got lots of troops, why give them a really good weapon if they're not going to last very long. Just give them a stick and off they go. So they tend to have, they're not worse weapons, well, they're just lighter, but it means they'll be cheaper. So the troops tend to be, they have less armor. They actually, when you look at their standard equipment on the AI cards, they come with both a melee and a range weapon, which most units in the game don't. So they're prepared for combat of all types, but they are very much about specialists. So you have your general troops. So we do have the recruit, the recruit legionary, the prime legionary, then the veteran decanus and centurions. So you've got those kind of steps up of the standard troop. But then you've got the specialists. So you've got the Legion Explorer. So they're fast and light, and they've got lots of great expertise skills. They're kind of like the specialists to get in there and do, hacking computers, lock picking, that kind of thing. We've got the Legionary Scout, who's fast and agile, who's also great at sniping, but he's incredibly lightly armored, if at all. So he's relying on his speed rather than his hardness. The Houndmaster, who can control the Legion mongrels and can actually boost their abilities too. The Vexillarius as well, of course, who are good fighters, but they're kind of the standard bearers, so they actually benefit other troops around as well. So there's loads of kind of specialists there. Now, when you're making a force of them, you're going to have to work out, which ones you need or you want to go in there. So it's going to, I think, be interesting in terms of list building for Caesar Legion.
Folks are looking to, expand, their forces or the game itself. Are there going to be sort of different options? I mean, is there I guess what would it be, like a New Vegas 2-player starter set, or like a larger box? I mean, what are the options for folks to really sort of dig into the new content?
It's a really interesting thing where when we were envisioning this, there were a couple of different ways we could go, and we certainly dabbled with the idea of a kind of a refresh of the 2-player starter set. We ended up not going that way for a kind of number of reasons. So this is kind of echoing what's gone before, but also is the first step into a slightly different way of doing things as well. So what I'd say about the kind of the New Vegas rules expansion is think of this as it's a really good addition, an expansion to the 2-player starter set that kind of resets the clock a little bit. So if you really like, New Vegas, and that's your jam, and we know there are plenty of people out there because we saw the comments, you would get your 2-player starter set for your rule book and your tokens, your dice, and then you'd pick up the New Vegas rules expansion. And what that will have in it is there's a booklet, and then kind of the equivalent to the card decks that people are familiar with from the waves. And the rules booklet has things you'd be familiar with. So it's got some campaigns, it's got some new ways of kind of applying a kind of a New Vegas filter over the top of a game, playing some of those scenarios. And there's some model galleries and some painting guides. It's really nice to have been able to bring them back. And I think what that really does is that then will form the foundation, and we would then expand upon that. So in the fullness of time, there might be a New Vegas 2, as it were, and that would then take that model and expand on it. And then the thing that we're working on at the moment, which I think we'll talk about in a minute, is Commonwealth, and that's kind of the similar kind of thing, which is like, let's take Fallout 4 and apply the Fallout 4 filter, as I like to sort of call it, to the core experience. So the idea is, people will have their preference for which of the various games they like and which of the factions they like. And so by picking up the 2-player starter set, which is always the start for anyone, and then one of these kind of thematic jumping off points, combining those two, that gives you the foundation. So as James has said, it turns out there was a huge amount of weaponry that perhaps we weren't even anticipating. So this will give you all the cards for all of those New Vegas themed weapons. It gives you the Legion and the NCR, and then some of the other characters and creatures and robots that you'd encounter. One of the things that's so difficult is whenever we release something or we reveal something, inevitably you get that wave of excitement, which is fantastic to see. And then you get the people saying, oh, what about X? And the answer I will always give people is, it's not that we didn't put X in because we didn't like it or we're not doing it. It's just that there is a finite space, and we can always come back. So this is not necessarily the only New Vegas thing that will ever happen in the history of Fallout Wasteland Warfare. This is what we felt was a really good representation of that core experience. And then in time, you know, we can add the more unusual creatures, and we can add, you know, more characters that perhaps we haven't got around to yet. The bulk of the first 4 waves could almost be treated as the foundation for the Commonwealth, and then this new Commonwealth box, which we'll talk about, is that sort of next phase. And then theoretically, the New Vegas Wave 6 is the first experience for New Vegas, and then there'll be a kind of a New Vegas Wave 2, and then in time, you know, we are looking at Fallout 3 at the moment, and so on and so forth. And the idea is ultimately we will build up a kind of a library of all these different games that people love. And, you know, all I can say is whatever you love at some point, you know, unless it's the most obscure out of the way side character that has no real, you know, impact, it will find a way into the game. And, you know, we're getting, like, we're not getting to the end of the Fallout 4 content, but we're getting to the point where I feel like we've done a really thorough job for the things you really would expect to see, and now we can start to specialize. And I feel like, you know, New Vegas, James took that approach of what are the things that you would expect to see, and then we can build on that in the future with kind of more things.
And I think as well, we will continue to support with every month we do the Fallout Friday, which is our kind of like hashtag campaign. So we throw up a free scenario every month that will normally be in some way linked to, you know, releases and so forth. And so what I was going to say is kind of wave, you know, New Vegas Wave 1, as it were, which is Fallout Wave 6. It's confusing. So why we stopped doing numbering, and we've just moved to, so the New Vegas Wave, like we're just calling it names now. That's 6 months of releases with 12 miniature products and then the rules pack. So it's quite a, you know, it's quite a broad, you know, product range within that. It's the two key factions that James identified, and then, you know, that sort of makes it the first half. So that's 6 boxes, 3 for each of the factions, and then there's 6 more boxes which expand super mutants. So, you know, we've now revealed, or had revealed for us, because there was a slight incident where information got released that perhaps wasn't quite what we were ready to release, but never mind. So yeah, there's several packs for the super mutants. You've got the Nightkin, and then some characters like Tabitha Rowell, Marcus and Lily. So that's really cool if you play super mutants. A couple of different character packs. So if you play survivors, or you're looking for those kind of, you know, named allies, you know, Eddie, Rex. Who else is in there? Some other people.
What the other companions?
Yeah.
So Boone.
That's right.
Yeah. I find him quite funny because he's got such hatred for Caesar's Legion that he gets a penalty if he doesn't attack the Legion model than he could have.
Oh wow, that's a great little rule. Yeah.
But he's incentivized to follow through on his hatred. We got Veronica, who she's the one that I had as my companion, and she's got like ridiculous kind of melee powers. So she's actually got an ability that if someone attacks her and misses, she gets a free attack back.
Oh, very cool.
So they've all got their, like, I've tried to boil down, like, you know, their personality and their character, and give them simple but effective abilities that can communicate that, make them feel different to everything else.
And one thing I saw as well, which I was really excited for, and probably my favorite, you know, temporary companion in the game, I guess, was in the Burn Man. Saw in the issue of Modiphius that was released, that big sort of full page coming soon, and sort of my eyes went pretty wide on that. So it sounds like you know, there's still going to be some additional characters and units which haven't been leaked for you know, lack of a better term. So that's pretty exciting. But you know, I guess another you know, interesting thing would be when are we looking to see sort of that you know, that larger reveal, when folks will be able to you know, start doing their pre-orders and that sort of thing on the Modiphius website?
The plan is that next month will be the kind of the opening of the pre-order, and things will start shipping the month after. So what's that? That's April, shipping in May. We're in you know, we're still dealing with the kind of the reverberations of COVID, and now we have the wonders of Brexit to deal with as well. So that does slightly throw a spanner in the works. But as long as, you know, things go the way we're planning, you know, the resin is already well underway. The book should be printing and shipping soon. So that's the hope. In terms of the pre-order, what you're going to have is it's the kind of the first 3 months worth of products. So this is a kind of a 6 month worth of content. So it will be the kind of the rules expansion, and the NCR and the Legion will be the first 3 months. So there's 3 boxes for Legion, 3 boxes for NCR, so 1 product a month. But if you pre-order, you'll get you can order both or one or the other faction depending on your loyalties. You will get all of that in that kind of first month pre-order. And yeah, so it's that thing of, if you want to support your local gaming store, go to them, please do. If you come to us, you'll get essentially the first half of the things ahead of time, and also the promo Burned Man that we were talking about. The second half will be the super mutants and the robots and the companions that we've spoken about. And then at the end of that, so after the full 6 months with all 12 products out, we will then do a big bundle for the entire wave, because we know some people like to kind of wait until the end and pick it all up in one fell swoop. Appreciation for them. And again, there'll be a little discount with that, and again you'll get the Burn Man. So that's kind of how it's going to look. One of the amusing things is, so with the accidental reveal of the entire wave that was very much not planned, the one thing that people didn't see was the Eddie Rex box. And the reason that wasn't shown is not because it doesn't exist, but because the first painted version of Rex disappeared and nobody knows where he went. And then the second one was posted and took several months to arrive. So we almost lost 2 Rexes. Luckily, the second one eventually arrived and we were able to get the photography done. But it was just, we literally didn't have photographs of the model for us to have finished the box packaging, solicitation, etc. So there is a 12th box that people haven't seen. Releases start January, February, March, April, May, and will run for 6 months. So that takes us towards the end of the year. And then Commonwealth will be the next thing that starts to fit in there as the kind of the next cycle.
One thing that I love about this game is that the rules do tend to be a bit of a living document, where there's changes coming as new factions and things like that come into the game. Are there sort of any larger, and maybe I'll put this to both of you, any sort of more broad changes coming to the game, with the release of New Vegas?
I think the introduction of the Nightkin are an interesting one. That there's elements in the game or mechanics in the game that we've kind of used in one way, and then we can actually use a parallel to those to do other things, and that happens quite a lot throughout the game. But the example I'll give is that we have those heroic cards, so you can make a unit heroic. So you've got access to using action points for different things. They've got they can use luck and criticals. So the Nightkin use a similar system, but their card is called Unpredictable. And we've kind of utilized this back with the robots. We had Clunky, so you could have a robot that was cheaper but wasn't quite so good. Whereas the Nightkin are called Unpredictable. And they basically have their general stats are that they're better, they're more intelligent, right? So they're better that way than general super mutants, and they've got expertise skills. But they're overall, like combat-wise, their basic card isn't quite as good. But the unpredictable side of things is that when they activate, there's a chance that they may be more kind of enraged and more they've gone slightly not a frenzy but slightly mad. So that's when they get their boosts, and they get an action point to spend. They've got better strength, better armor, and at that point they're better than the regular super mutant. So you've got kind of super mutant in the middle, and you've got the sort of fairly casual Nightkin and the one that's unpredictable up here. However, the unpredictable ones have to go and engage in combat if they can. So, but you can't rely on when it's going to happen, because it's a random thing at the start of the turn. And I quite like that. Is it Lily? She has the voice in the head of Leo, and then she has an ability called Leo, which is that the player gets to choose how likely it is that she'll go crazy or not. So the player doesn't get to choose exactly that they will be or won't be, but they can increase it one way or the other. So it is interesting to utilize the mechanics that we've already used in similar, I say in different ways, but with the same principles. And that means then that players don't need to relearn lots of things. It's just, a different way of doing things rather than a new way of doing things. We are sort of expanded the idea of legendary units. So that's another area where we've added an extra kind of layer of interest for some of these really big creatures, where you don't fight just one unit card. The creature or the unit may have 3 unit cards. So Frank Horrigan is one of the key examples who had 3 unit cards. And the idea was, in the video game, you fight a sort of a boss stage, and then he runs off, and you get to fight the second stage later on. I thought it'd be kind of cool to be able to do that. So you don't always necessarily play up against all three parts of Frank Horrigan, and some people wonder why the final stages he's so slow. It's like, well, because in the video game he's just without legs, right? It's that last bit.
That's right.
But you could play one bit and then the next scenario play against the next bit, or you could play with different parts or stages of that boss, and that we've taken and used into the Wasteland, where we have the legendary creatures that are like that too. So yeah, I think it was really important early on, knowing how varied the world of Fallout is, that we had enough moving parts to play with for that granularity to be able to tell these sort of different stories and different characters. Before doing New Vegas, I counted up and we had 182 different weapons.
Wow.
And that's not because we want lots of different weapons in general, but that's what the game, Fallout contains so many different things. And that includes creatures because they've got their own individual, like swipe or bite or whatever. And then New Vegas added a whole bunch of other ones. But fingers crossed so far, there's been enough granularity to be able to portray them, and they're all being different. So yeah, we kind of, I think we're building on the foundations that we laid early on. And actually it's paying off pretty well.
So many different factions in New Vegas, from the individual casinos on the strip to the Great Khans and the Legion, and it just goes on and on. I mean, was it tough to figure out what to start with initially, and then I guess where to go next after that?
So the tricky thing is always bandwidth. So on average, it takes about 7 days of sculpt. And obviously, this is 50% of the game is James and the design, and then 50% is the kind of the miniatures and the sculpting, and they balance each other out. And it's tricky because sometimes with Into the Wasteland we've done things where there isn't a miniature for it yet, spoilers, and so we need to make sure we don't put too much of that in. What I'm always trying to do with kind of a wave is think about, is there a story that needs to be told here? And one of the tricky things for me is I didn't actually do New Vegas. It was done by I had an assistant at the time. I did one box in New Vegas. I take responsibility for one thing, which we can talk about in a minute. But it was that thing of, right, what is the core experience of New Vegas? We know that the NCR and the Legion are the core story, and choosing that side and navigating that whole conflict. We know super mutants already exist, so that's quite an easy kind of, we can expand super mutants. And I think as well, the super mutants in New Vegas provide a different experience anyway. The Nightkin, the story of Lily, it's quite an interesting story as well. So that was kind of a natural fit. And of course, then, like you say, there's all the gangs, there's all the guys on the strip. There is so much that could have done. I think the decision really was right not to include that yet, because that makes kind of a natural package for something else in the future. So we didn't include that. Companions, it's always nice to have companions, because they are those those characters you spend time with. You spend so much. They are your assistants throughout the game, and everyone's kind of got their favorite. So again, that was kind of a natural stage one fit. If we were missing those characters, people would ask where they were, and then we just had that bandwidth for one more thing. And again, robots, the Securitrons are very iconic for that thing. For that experience. So again, that was a really natural fit for, again, we're expanding existing. I mean, James and I were literally discussing creatures and robots as factions today, actually, and what an interesting situation we've arrived at. But they are, let's call them an existing faction. That was another good thing that people sort of have asked for, and it was quite a nice, iconic piece. And then that kind of, that soaked up all the sculpt bandwidth. That felt like quite a meaty amount of content for James to work on. It felt like a good amount of content for that slice of New Vegas. Yeah. But what it didn't do is say, and then that's the end of it. What it then left was lots on the plate for, and obviously the Birdman. It's quite funny. I've seen comments from people like, "Who is that?" Because they don't know the Birdman because he's from the expansion pack. Right. Yeah. So even in the core experience, we still managed to just dip our toe into the kind of the reaching beyond the core experience. And of course, one of the reasons it exists is we always try and do a promo figure, and obviously with this one, this is the second promo figure, because we did the Ranger, and the Ranger came out. I mean, the joke about the Ranger was we actually originally planned on releasing the Ranger at Adepticon 2019. Okay. And I literally had that miniature under the desk throughout the entirety of Adepticon. and couldn't show it to people, and I had the models to sell and we couldn't sell them because we hadn't quite lined up the final, and it was just like, I have this thing, it's right in front of you and I can't show it to you. So like we had that plan for so long. So we knew we had to do another promo figure as well. And what I like with the promo figures is, you know, we've sort of spoken about doing those core beats or those recognizable beats. What I love about the promo figures is we try and find something that's a little bit different. So, you know, we've seen things like Nuka Girl, who's obviously from the branding of Fallout. We've seen the wizard, what's his name?
Lorenzo
Cabot.
Lorenzo
Yes.
Cabot.
Yes.
So he's a really good example, and the same with the Burn Man, of someone where you're like, this person is a really, really interesting slice of a bit of the game that maybe people don't even know about. And so that's kind of what we decided with this and with the Burn Man. The Burn Man is a really good, another iteration of that thing. And, you know, certainly the the promo figure for Commonwealth, I think, should get a chuckle out of people, because again, it's that same sort of thing of like, this is something you will know, like you will absolutely know who the promo figure is, but it might not necessarily be who you're expecting.
Interesting.
Fun, like they're just a fun extra for people to kind of create these mad little stories.
Oh wow! Now I'm just completely speculating. When this video goes live, I might have to have a little speculate in the comments about who that's going to be. Speaking of Commonwealth, that's a pretty good segue. There was that bit of a tease on a Fallout Friday a couple weeks ago of the base of a fairly beastly looking creature. Was a pretty interesting, which again got some folks speculating there. Maybe you can give just a little bit of an idea, again without bursting the bubble too much, about what folks might be looking at when it comes there, as far as either whether it's factions, units, additional rules, that sort of thing, and maybe even not to get too excited, when that might be coming down the pipe as well.
Like I say, like if New Vegas was the kind of the first testing of the waters of this kind of second phase of Wasteland Warfare, shall we call it, not a second edition, just to be clear. Commonwealth is kind of the next iteration of that, and reinforcing that idea and building it even broader. So we know that we've kind of done some but not all of the core, like the kind of the core story factions of Fallout. So we've got our survivors, we've got our Brotherhood of Steel, we've got our Institute, super mutants are a natural fit. So what this does is it kind of, I would say, it finishes that package. So there are 2 new factions, a teaser for another potential faction, and then some other things. And again, James and I had a meeting this morning. We were discussing some of these beats. So I think there has been this long-running office joke about me and my kind of obsession / passion for the Gunners. I've been banging the drum for the Gunners, and the Gunners, we have had Gunner sculpts. I think they were revealed in the original reveal of Wasteland Warfare, and they've never materialized. A couple of reasons, A, finding the right fit, and B, they are, for whatever strange reason, they've become my passion project. And I was like, we're not just making them raiders. They've got to be, got to be different. They're not just raiders. There's, they are, yes, they are filthy mercenaries, but they have, I'm not going to say it's a code of honor, because I don't think they've got much honor, but they have
code of conduct.
Code of conduct, exactly. Yeah. So, they work for money, and if you pay them, then they do what you want them to do. And I think, one of the reasons I was so kind of keen on that is if you look at the experience in Fallout 4, you don't just meet antagonistic gunners. There are few, but some gunners that are more neutral, and you can trade with them, you can speak to them, and it really, to me, it's I think they're just people doing a job.
Yes, John is obsessed with the gunners. He thinks it's not a problem, but it is. It was quite funny that it was one that John always mentioned. But it's only now that we finally get to bring them out, like John says, because of the bandwidth that we have, and there's so much stuff that we could do. The Gunners are interesting because it's another military faction, and again, we want it to feel different. So we have the Enclave, who already who work together and they boost each other's abilities, and the Gunners will be doing a similar sort of thing, but they'll be helping each other, but in a very different way in terms of their structure. So they're very interesting.
One of the hard things for me with Fallout is there are no good guys. So I always cheerlead the Brotherhood of Steel as like my version of the good guys, but they are pretty extreme. And I guess what I like about the Gunners, to me, is they kind of don't have a overarching philosophy. they just are the purest of the mercenaries, and so pay the money, then they're fine. If you get in the way of whatever their money paid mission is, bad luck for you.
Yeah.
But they're not evil, they're just mercenaries, and I just quite like that idea that it's the one faction that doesn't want to eat you, doesn't want to convert you, doesn't want to turn you into a robot. they just are doing a day's job, and unfortunately for some people that job involves being shot by them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird. I can't even explain why, but for whatever reason they spoke to me in a way that has got under my skin. So yeah, so the idea with the Commonwealth is there's these two new factions. That's one of them. The other one is the Railroad. So the Railroad are the last of what I'd call the story factions that hadn't been fleshed out yet. I've got a lot of time for the Railroad as well. I think they are a mostly sympathetic faction, apart from it all goes a bit, one of the tricky things about Fallout 4 is there is no good ending. Everyone ultimately, to have a good ending, there has to be some negative with that, and obviously, nuking the Institute could be seen as quite an aggressive step. But spoilers if you've not finished Fallout 4, apologies. So we wanted to bring the Railroad in because, again, it's that thing of they are very like the Survivors, and you could argue they're kind of an offshoot of the Survivors or sympathetic to the Survivors, depending on how you look at it. Very character driven. There's a lot of really interesting people in there. And again, I did like their philosophy and their motivation. They are liberators. They are trying to free synths and kind of bring that kind of democratic approach to existence in the Wasteland. And I really like some of the characters as well. And I think the team has done a lovely job sculpting them. I think everyone you'd expect to see is in there, and even the generic grunts. If you pay close attention, you could put names to every single miniature that's in that box, even though there are some more generic troops as well as the named characters. So, I did my research on that, and we did. You will find everyone in those boxes somewhere in Fallout 4. Not all of them are having a good time, shall we say. And then that kind of got combined with James's approach, where he's really tried to give that kind of flavor. And James, you can talk to us in a minute, but like that, the idea that each of these models has a purpose and a character, and it's tricky. Again, we were literally discussing it this morning. It's tricky sometimes finding that kind of rules gap in the game, but I'll let James talk to that. So they were the two experiences that we wanted to kind of help flesh out the kind of factional approach. But then what we also wanted to do is really continue to fill out the world, because one of the things I think that's really important about Wasteland Warfare is it's not, and I'm literally going to use James's words now, it's not kind of your factional line up and shoot game. It is this kind of adventure war game is the terminology we use, and so there are things that you can experience and encounter in Fallout that I think are integral to that experience that I wanted to make sure got included, because what they provide is really helpful tools for a GM if they're playing the RPG, or if you're doing adventure story beats. So we've also made sure there's some new creatures and things that people have been asking for some time. And again, it's not that we don't see you, it's just we have to find the slot in the schedule. Obviously that base was I think a fairly unsubtle teaser as to one of the things. I think if you know what you were looking at, you'd know exactly what it was, and I've seen a few people get it right. Yeah. Robots. So I know one of the complaints we get is people saying, I don't want to have to buy 3 Assaultrons every time I want 2 Protectrons. Right. Yes, we understand. That was a combination of models that we had at the time that makes for a really nice flavorful encounter. So if you're playing RPG or you're doing your random encounters, you only need a handful of robots. Now we are at that thing, so there are 2 boxes of robots that are the robots that people have been crying out for. So there is new Mr. Handies, Miss Nanny, and Gutsy, Mr. Gutsy, yeah, that's what he's called, isn't it? The military one. And then Protectrons, there's some new flavors of Protectron. So it's starting to expand what started as just a core. Now we're expanding out into a broader faction. And then the last model, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I think it's my favorite model we've ever sculpted. It really, truly is a thing of beauty. Like this particular character model is stunning. It really is a centerpiece model. I've had the first submaster runs of it, and it exceeded my expectations, and I was expecting good things from it. And I think people really get a kick out of it when they see it. But I think the other thing, as part of this miniatures range rather than the game side of things, I'm really trying to push what we do with the product to enhance the player experience. So the Securitrons were the last of the boxes for New Vegas, and that was the one box that I was directly involved with. And one of the things you'll notice with that kit when you get it is there's a couple of different options when you build it. So, for example, the rocket pods in its shoulders, you can have them flaps down or flaps up. So you can have it deployed for shooting its rockets, or you can have it flaps up as if it's maneuvering around the battlefield. And there are actually matching arms. So if when it's firing its rockets, it sort of tucks its arms up into its body, and then when it's moving around, it's got its kind of arms out. And then also it comes with 4 different faceplates, so you can have 3 of the kind of the smiley face, the army man, and I think we put the cowboy face in there, I want to say, and then it also comes with a blank one. So if you want to do one of the other options, or you're good with your freehand, you can then add any of the other faces that you choose. And so it's starting to explore what we can do with the kits beyond just the kind of the great sculpting, and then you'll see that develop more and more. And with Commonwealth, it's kind of really not quite the first, but pretty much the first repeated instance of when you buy some of our kits now, you get 2 arm choices, and in some cases even 2 head choices. Wow. So you can I will buy the gunner's box, and I want my gunner soldier to have a combat rifle, but it also comes with an option for a laser rifle, for the sake of argument. And we're not quite at the kind of you come with 5 arms and all these great plastic options. We're not there yet, but it's starting to move towards as much flexibility as possible. To let people build more of a WYSIWYG approach if they want to, but also to give more value, I would say. And also then if you really like a faction and you want to buy multiple boxes, you're not restricted to any one loadout. It's going to be a little bit easier to chop and change. So that's been really good. And the swappable heads was one of those things where we were like, oh, could we get away with it? And we've done it with some of the Brotherhood. And it's basically where we've got some of the gunner characters that you'll recognize from some key story moments, and they come with both their kind of hats on and hats off option. So that's been really exciting, and it's something I'm, to the point of irritating the 3D team, where I'm like, oh guys, can we have these 12 arm options? And they're like, no, pick 2. And I'm like, okay, fine, can we have this one and this one? So we're just trying to add more kind of value for money, more playability, because it's always nice to be able to just tweak your models.
And Eddie's an interesting one as well. So one of the things, kind of going back to the conversation about Commonwealth, one of the things we know people talk about a lot is I need more iBots.
Yes.
Why can I only get the iBot in one box? Da, 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 da. So the issue with the iBot is it's a casting nightmare. All those aerials going off in 12 different directions just make that a production headache. So Eddie is the first iteration of a new style of iBot. Obviously Eddie, is he? I guess. I'm sorry, I'm making assumptions about Eddie's gender there. I apologize. Eddie the robot. Comes in 3 parts, so it's like the bottom half, the top half, and then kind of the faceplate. And then the other thing we've done as well is they have some of the aerials, but not all of the aerials. But what we've done is anywhere where an aerial would be in the full thing, there's the kind of the body of it, and then there's a little drill marking. So if you want to make the all singing, all dancing, multiple aerials show, you can use that as a kind of locator to drill a hole and just put a brass rod in. So there is that option for the kind of the modelers and the people who really want that kind of full representation. And I think that's going to form the basis for when we get around to doing kind of an iBot box or putting the iBots elsewhere. That same thing of we'll put as many aerials on as we can afford to for production complication, but then by providing at least a guide for people who want to go the full journey, you kind of get that best of both worlds there. And so then we can start to get more iBots out, because I appreciate they are a rare resource in the Wasteland at the moment. And again, it'll be a similar thing of, you'll probably get the gunners and the railroad first. I think the other thing with the gunners and the railroad is they are going to be 2 boxes, not 3. So the traditional model that you've seen is the 3 boxes. So it's kind of the core, the troops pack, and then the hero pack. With the gunners, and kind of for the next few waves, we're trying something a little bit different. We've started to get a feel for how people approach the game, what people want, and so by doing fewer boxes, but making sure the contents of those boxes are quite interesting, I think we can still provide that same variety. And again, that's where the kind of the swappable weapons comes in as well, and the swappable heads, where it's like, oh, I can get the same box twice, but still get two very different, outcomes. With the railroads, you actually get characters in both. With the gunners, you get characters in one, but not the other. If people want bigger factions and they do play larger games, they can buy the same box twice and still have that flexibility. Because what it means is we can then put more other things into the wave. So by, if let's say for the sake of argument, an average wave is 12 boxes, all of a sudden, if that goes from 6 boxes for the factions to 4, there's 8 boxes to play with rather than 6. And, we can start to experiment. And I think then, to kind of expand on that even further, what we're also looking at is kind of top-up waves, which are, so if you think of like, the 2-player starter set is like this zoomed out. You're up on the Pridwin looking down on the Wasteland. And then the kind of the regional boxes, so New Vegas and Commonwealth, are kind of starting to zoom in a bit. You're standing on top of a tower looking down. And then kind of the third part of that is that really, really zoomed in. You're at the ground level. And so, post Commonwealth, I'm not going to tell you what's in it, but it zooms in even further to, it's kind of an expansion to the expansion of like a very specific location within the Commonwealth.
Right.
And a very memorable story beat involving, again, some more characters and some more troops and expansions for factions that you won't have seen before. And I hope you'll know them, because they're some of my favorite bits of the game. And it's kind of it's an even more zoomed in thing of like, right, and this is now a top up to the top up, and that's where we can start to jump around and be like, right, we know that people are waiting for the kings, for the sake of argument. So we can just zoom into the kings for 2 months and do 2 months of just, the kings and whoever, tell a nice little neat package story there, and then jump out of that and go and do the same for Fallout 3, and then jump back to Fallout 4 and do that. So what I'd say about Commonwealth is what it does is it tops up into the Wasteland. So Into the Wasteland is the kind of that really interesting, living environment to play in, and it contained cards that people are going to say, well, I've not had the model for that yet. Well, guess what? Some of those models are coming now. So, Brahmin, for the sake of argument, I see so many people saying, where's my Brahmin? Well, the Brahmin are coming, things like that. So yeah, we're really just starting to have a couple of different levers we can pull now, and it's about making sure that whenever whenever James writes a module, it's supported by the right miniatures. It just gives us, that kind of really nice push-pull of like, what are we doing? How much do we need to do? Is this going to be a quick win, or is this going to be something broader? Is it going to expand what's gone before, or is it going to be something new? Because the tricky thing was, everybody has their thing that they love, and everyone's constantly like, where's the thing that I love? And you're like, it's coming, but there's other things in the queue, and so it's managing those different elements.
The conversation John has with himself about the gunners.
literally that. Like,
Johnny's always muttering to himself in the corner. That's what he's saying. Where are the gunners? You have to wait your turn. No, but I want the gunners.
You've seen the gunners because you've seen that troops pack. We've actually even modified what we'd shown, and so some of those troops that you've seen have that customizable options that they didn't have originally, and then we've added some of the kind of the real notable characters. And there's another gunners box down the path that will happen. So that's been really cool. And yeah, we'll just keep theoretically, for as long as we can, we'll keep doing that sort of thing. And then, whatever mad idea that James has about, I've had this really interesting notion about another way of expanding the game. Let's see how that integrates with some of the possible model options, and try and build that kind of a harmonious approach where they the models in the game are in lockstep for giving people new experiences and new adventures. Is the plan.
John mentioned adventure wargaming, and actually going back to something that you asked about earlier, Ryan, words about rules changes and additions. So right from the start, it was really clear that Fallout is a game of story, and I really wanted to have the game portray that. So your scenarios, they're very story based. In most cases, it's not about annihilating the other team. That's not the win. In fact, if you do, it doesn't make any difference. The win is the win, and it might be like activate that computer, steal the data. It's there's such a massive variety, and that's been really important, and which is why the game has the skills like lockpick, computers, and search. Because as a player in the Fallout video games, you're not just shooting. Combat is a really important tool, and it's exciting and fun. Don't get me wrong, but there's other elements to it too. So it's been really important to have these kind of storytelling scenarios. And adventure wargaming was kind of the phrase I thought of to try and explain how it's a bit different. It's not just these soldiers kill these soldiers and vice versa. Writing those scenarios is actually tougher than I expected. I think when I first started, because you play Fallout and it's like, yes, you go in and you're going to attack the super mutants. It's like, well, what's your other player doing? He's not like there just to be the GM. He's there he wants to play too. So to have both sides have an interesting story is actually a really an interesting task to write. It's fun, but it definitely takes longer. However, there are other aspects that we're trying to open up to players to be able to play different styles of games. So, for example, Into the Wasteland, which was an expansion we've released, is all about going into the wasteland and exploring it. And if you go into Fallout, they're not all just sitting there. Creatures don't sit there waiting just to kill you. They're quite happy to do that if you go near enough, but that's not their sole purpose. They're doing other stuff. They've got their own stuff to deal with. Maybe fighting each other, maybe just two super mutants walking across in the distance. They don't care about you. They've got their own jobs. And I really wanted to try and portray that so that people, especially playing solo and co-op, because we know a lot of people do that, that's a really important aspect, and to build upon the AI rules that I've created to allow people to take a piece of wasteland, generate what's within it, and then go in it and perform whatever task they want to do. Now, whether they're just scavenging and doing their own thing or following one of the scenarios, the objectives laid down Into the Wasteland, the rule set is up to them. So that's been really interesting. On top of that, we've also, Homestead's been mentioned, but not really a huge amount of what's in it. But to give the top level of it, the settlement phase, you are really just writing on what structures you have and you're utilizing them. It's very, it's an abstract thing. Homestead takes that and puts it on the table. So as you go through settlement phase, you are drawing where your buildings are on the map. And there may be events that happen as well during that. There's a consequence system in the main game where some things you do get shuffled into the event deck because something may happen later, like maybe in between games you hired a guy and he's going to help you. Well, you don't know when he's going to turn up. So you shuffle his card into the deck. So it's got that kind of choices with consequences. Utilizing that system, when you go exploring during a settlement phase, there may be events that happen, that something you did, you stole something, well, they may come to get it back later on. And that will trigger scenarios. So then you'll play scenarios and you'll actually map out on the table whether you're using full-blown scenery, or maybe just using paper and drawing where things are, or using string or whatever, anything to show where your structures are. But you will actually then play in your settlement at the time. So that makes the choice of when you build your settlement, do you plan space? So do you build around the edges and leave expansion room? But that's bad because you've got a lot of ground to cover to defend it if someone comes along to burn it down. Or do you build close in? And that then means you've got to then knock things down and expand. It's harder to expand.
Oh, wow.
So that's another interesting area to play. A while ago we released for the solo players the solo RPG campaign as well, the first part called the Unexpected Shepard, which is a choose your own path style game, but you actually play scenarios on the table with the models for the combats, rather than just purely in most of those sort of books you just roll the dice. So that, again, another different way of playing it, and one I'm really pleased with it. It does a lot of things that other choose your own story books don't do, with decisions that you make will come back and bite you later on by recording your choices. So there are lots of ways we're trying to support. We know solo players want support for them, co-op as well, because they can utilize the same things. We have people who want to play against each other, people who are playing in lots of ways, and we really want to support all of those types of play, which I think is quite a difference to hopefully other war games.
Between the New Vegas stuff, Commonwealth, Homestead sounds really exciting as well, and I know there's a lot of folks online who have been clamoring for that next chapter of the Unexpected Shepard as well. Unless guys had any other big secret reveals, any additional Liberty Primes you wanted to drop on me. I think that's pretty much everything I had for you here today. Thanks so much for coming on. I know a lot of folks are really going to enjoy, getting to see a bit of behind the scenes.
Cheers for inviting us, dude. And maybe when Commonwealth is in its final approach, we'll come back on and talk Commonwealth.
I would love it very much so, and again, like you said, everyone has their favorites, and I'll just leave you with centaurs.
I could neither confirm nor deny that centaurs may or may not be in sculpting. Take from that what you will.
I will. There we go. Message boards go nuts at that point. That's perfect. Well, James, John, fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time. And yeah, like I said, hopefully we'll catch up down the road. And best of luck as New Vegas hits the ground running. Well, there you go. Between all of the New Vegas models coming in the first wave, some look at the Commonwealth, Homestead, new robots. Man, this interview was great. The guys at Modiphius really went above and beyond, letting me take a look behind the scenes at what it takes to get some of these waves going, and it was really nice just to talk with the guys and to have the chance to shoot the breeze with them. So hope you enjoyed that interview, and more importantly than not, New Vegas is on the way. Coming in April, you'll get the official reveal, and then coming in May, those units are going to start hitting shelves and doing the pre-order. So I'm so excited to get that Burn Man model. He's my favorite. I'm in a playthrough of New Vegas right now. Just got into Zion Canyon. Looking forward to encountering Joshua Graham, both in the virtual world and on the tabletop. So thanks so much again for stopping by and for watching the videos. If you're a fan of what you're seeing, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the interview. Let me know what you think about the announcements that are coming up, about the new models. Just say hi. I'd love to chat with anyone about the game, so leave me a message, and stay tuned for more content. We're going to get back to some of the faction videos, the Better Know a Faction reviews, as well as finally going to get finished up the Vestiges Resurgent campaign now that I'm in this lovely new studio and I actually have the room to play some more games. So keep your eyes peeled for more battle reports, more interviews, more reviews as we just got going here. 2021 is going to be a great year for Fallout Wasteland Warfare and for WGNR. Once again, my name's Ryan. Thanks for stopping by. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you all next time.